Hi, I'm Dakota. You ever watch someone tear your name apart, right in front of strangers, and call it love? My sister ripped my passport in half. At the airport, in public, loud enough for the whole gate to hear. She didn't know I was a federal inspector. She just thought I was the little sister she could keep erasing. One document, one conversation, one accident at a time. But how many accidents does it take before you start wondering, was any of it ever an accident at all? I wasn't in the photo, and maybe that's exactly how they wanted it. The group text chimed again as I stared at the image. Vera, flanked by cousins and their kids, all in matching blue polos with our late mother's initials embroidered over the heart. They were smiling like a Hallmark ad. Me? I was already seated at gate B32, my boarding pass tucked under my thigh, invisible as ever. No one had even looked back when I walked away from the gate counter. No last minute, oh wait, let's take one with Dakota. No arm over my shoulder. Vera had declared it complete. All here, all. I glanced down at my seat assignment again, 37E, next to the lavatory. Technically on the plane, sure, but not really with them. The terminal buzzed around me with the soft chaos of morning travel, coffee cups clinking, wheels of overpacked carry-ons rolling over tiled floors, the intermittent crackle of boarding announcements. And in the middle of all that noise, I sat still, a calm pool in the eye of my own family's selective amnesia. I shifted in the uncomfortable plastic chair, the scent of jet fuel faint but present. I didn't travel this way often, not anymore. For work, I flew in quiet lounges and priority lines, but this, being deliberately placed near a restroom, left off itineraries, forgotten in group photos, this was a statement, an old one. Truth is, I'd known since I was 15 that Vera saw me as a threat wrapped in silence. Our mother used to say I was the sharp one, and Vera, well, she was the steady hand. But the thing about being sharp, you cut things, sometimes even by accident, and steady hands don't like surprises. When Mom passed, Vera took over everything. Funeral arrangements, family group texts, vacation planning. No one objected. She was polished, professional, efficient. And I was the quiet one in a navy blazer who showed up, stood still, and went home. I looked up as boarding for Group 1 was called. Vera stood at the front with the others, laughing at something her husband said. Their kids wore matching neck pillows. She was always good at presentation. The flawless sister, the family representative. My mere presence seemed to ruin her symmetry. She caught my gaze briefly. No wave, just a tight, glossy smile. The kind you give strangers who cut you off in traffic. I could have said something. I could have stood up, walked over, asked her why she put me in row 37, why I wasn't included in the flight manifest, or why I was always the last to know. But that's not how Vera plays, and it's not how I survive. Instead, I pulled out my Kindle, opened a book I wouldn't read, and tried to look unfazed. The thing is, I didn't need first class. I didn't even need a picture. What I wanted, what I craved, was acknowledgement. Just once, I wanted Vera to say, "I see you, I know you're here." But in our family, acknowledgement often came after funerals. Sometimes not even then. A flash of a camera shutter pulled me out of my thoughts. Vera was taking another picture, this time a selfie with Malis and a few of the other cousins. I watched her angle the shot, tilt her chin, then laugh as she showed it to the others. My phone buzzed again. New post. Family flight. Let's do this for Mom, #Barrett bound. I zoomed in. Still not there. Somewhere between the overhead speaker calling for final boarding and Vera's third curated image, a thought slipped into my mind with the clarity of a knife through silk. They didn't forget me. They excluded me, on purpose. It wasn't bitterness that hit me, it was clarity. I stood up slowly, tucked my book away, and adjusted my jacket. No one needed to know who I really was, not yet. Let them smile for the camera. Let Vera play her part. The truth didn't need a spotlight, it just needed the right moment, and moments, well, I knew how to wait for those. It wasn't the booking mistake that broke me, it was the memory it unlocked. After settling into my corner of gate B32, I figured I'd scroll through messages and distract myself. Maybe someone had realized I wasn't in the group picture. Maybe someone had texted to say, "Hey, where are you sitting?" But no. Instead, there was a new message from Vera in the family group chat. It was a dim, slightly crooked photo of my passport lying on top of my boarding pass. She must have snapped it while I was grabbing coffee. Caption: Guess who finally remembered to bring ID this time? Thumbs up, laughing emojis, a gif of applause. Not a single soul in that chat asked why she took the photo. Not a single person questioned if I was okay with it, and not a single one defended me. I set the phone down in my lap and stared at the terminal wall across from me. My own ID, my name, turned into a joke again. And it wasn't even about the photo. It was the message under it. That familiar sting that says, "We see you, but not the way you want to be seen." I tried to shake it off, took a breath, told myself it wasn't worth reacting, but something felt off. That photo, something gnawed at me. I stood up and walked over to the counter to double-check my ticket. Maybe I just needed to make sure all was in order before we boarded. The agent at the counter was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Ms. Barrett," she said after glancing at her screen, "but your name doesn't exactly match the reservation." I blinked. "I don't understand. What does it say?" She turned the monitor slightly. It read, D. Barrett, 1R, not 2. "That's not my name," I said. She nodded, typing. "Yes, and since it's a federal document, we can't board you unless it matches. We can try to reprocess it, but it may take time, and there's a risk we'll miss the flight." The back of my throat went dry. I hadn't made the reservation. Vera had. She insisted. Said she had points to use and that it was no trouble. But now, this. I thanked the agent, stepped aside, and dialed Vera. She answered in 2 rings, chipper as ever. "Hey, what's up?" "There's an issue with the name on my ticket. It says Barrett, 1R. "Oh?" she said, like I'd told her the sky was cloudy. "Oops, I guess I missed that. You know, you've got one of those names people always spell wrong." "No, Vera," I replied evenly. "You made the reservation." "Well, I was in a hurry. It was late. I didn't realize. I thought you were the organized one. Can't you fix it?" I didn't answer right away. I just listened to the tone, that thin, syrupy condescension wrapped in fake concern. The one she used at Christmas when she told our cousin Malis, "You'll find someone, someday," with a smile that said the opposite. "You work for the government," she added. "I'm sure you can figure it out." I exhaled slowly, controlled. "Thanks, Vera," I said, and hung up before she could say more. I stood there for a minute, feeling the weight settle in my chest. This wasn't about a name. It never was. It was about undermining me. Publicly, subtly, strategically. Just like the wedding last year, when she introduced me to her in-laws as our half-sister, emphasizing the word half like it explained my presence. Technically accurate, emotionally surgical. That day, I smiled, nodded, and let it slide. Today, I didn't explode. I didn't cause a scene. But something shifted. I walked back to my seat and pulled out a notepad from my bag. I didn't use it often. Everything was digital these days. But there was something cathartic about pen to paper. I wrote down 3 things. Passport photo in group chat without permission. Booking error. Single R. You can fix it tone. I underlined the 3rd one twice. Because that's what always happened. I was supposed to fix it. I was expected to laugh along, to adjust, to absorb, to be the quiet one who didn't make waves. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't some intern trying to earn her seat at the table. I was a federal investigator who'd sat across from CEOs, field agents, and Homeland Security. I'd conducted audits that had grounded planes. And here I was, reduced to explaining why my name had 2 R's. It wasn't about being included in a photo. It wasn't about a typo. It was the steady erosion of dignity, masked as jokes, framed as oversights, and delivered with a smile. A couple of kids ran past, giggling as their father tried to wrangle them back into line. Across the way, Vera had rejoined the group. She was laughing again, that sharp, showy laugh she used when she wanted to make sure people knew she was unbothered. I watched her. She didn't look back at me once, and the edge wasn't just coming, she was sprinting toward it. I didn't move for a while, just sat there in the cafe, the bitter taste of black coffee clinging to my tongue. I'd ordered it because I needed something hot in my hands, not because I actually wanted it. The chill in the terminal had settled into my bones, and Vera's voice from that call still rang in my ears, even though I hadn't heard from her since the booking mistake. My phone buzzed. Mom. It had been months since she called me directly. Most of our interactions lived in short, polite texts or group threads where I was mostly ignored. I debated not answering. I should have let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. Dakota, her voice came through, warm but laced with that familiar undercurrent, the one that told me I was walking into a conversation where I was already guilty. "Hi, Mom," I said softly. "I heard there was an issue with your name on the ticket," she began. "No, how are you? No, are you okay?" Straight to the problem. I want to make sure you don't overreact. Vera's under a lot of pressure organizing this whole trip. Maybe just let it slide? Let it slide, that phrase, the family mantra, code for don't make anyone uncomfortable with the truth. I closed my eyes. "You think I caused the issue?" "I didn't say that," she replied quickly. "I just think we should all try to get along, especially for your mother's memory." "For your mother's memory," I repeated. Like she wasn't mine, too. Mom fell quiet. I waited a beat, then said goodbye and ended the call before the silence could stretch. I didn't cry, not anymore, but something tightened in my chest. Not grief, not anger, something colder. It was clarity again. That edge, I could see it now. And Vera wasn't walking toward it. She was dancing. A soft voice to my right broke my focus. "You okay?" I looked up. Maylis stood there holding a paper cup, eyes soft, unsure. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She settled into the chair next to me, keeping her coat wrapped tightly. We hadn't talked much in years, not beyond polite hellos at reunions, but something in her gaze told me this wasn't small talk. "I saw the text in the group," she said after a beat. I said nothing. She glanced around the cafe, then leaned closer. "This isn't the first time Vera's done something like that." That caught me off guard. I turned to her. She took a sip of her drink and then, without any drama, without hesitation, said, "When I was 17, I applied for a scholarship. I had a real shot at it, but the application confirmation never came through. I thought maybe I messed something up." I waited. 6 years later, she continued, I found out Vera intercepted the email. She told the committee I was withdrawing due to family obligations. She said I'd embarrass the family name if I went to that college. It was beneath our standards, apparently. A coldness spread from my stomach outward. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I tried," she said, voice small. "But Mom said I probably misunderstood, that Vera wouldn't do something like that. So I believed her." For a while. And then? I asked. Then I stopped believing anyone, she said, looking straight ahead. The silence sat heavy between us. I thought of all the things I'd let pass, the names misspelled, the introductions that minimized me, the times Vera stepped in and fixed things before I had the chance to even try. It hadn't just been about power, it was about control, and the most efficient way to control someone is to make them doubt their own memory. I should have told someone, Malis said softly, her eyes wet. You were a kid, I replied, and you were up against someone who could smile while stabbing. She looked at me, brows furrowed. Do you think she means to hurt people? I paused, then shook my head. I don't think she cares if she does. That's worse. We sat quietly. The gate announcements buzzed in the background. Boarding was starting soon. You don't deserve this, she said suddenly. None of it. That hit something I hadn't realized was still raw. I nodded. Neither do you. Her eyes widened slightly, then softened again. I gathered my things. I think it's time we stop letting her narrate our story. Malis didn't reply, but I saw something change in her posture, like a window opening, a small one, but still. As I stood and glanced across the terminal, I saw Vera again, laughing, taking more pictures, perfectly centered, perfectly lit. She had no idea. She didn't see the way Malis watched her now, not with fear, but with a hint of disappointment. She didn't see the way I walked straighter, stood firmer. She didn't see the ripple she'd started when she tried to push me off balance one more time. And she definitely didn't see the cliff she was waltzing toward. That was the moment I stopped pretending and started preparing. I didn't move right away. I stood there in the pre-boarding lane, my boarding pass in hand, pulse steady, eyes fixed on the floor in front of me as if I were counting the tiles. But inside I was drawing lines, quiet, firm, deliberate lines, lines Vera had been smudging since we were kids. A pause. Then the gate agent called, Now boarding first-class passengers for Flight 2289 to Seattle. I stepped forward. That's when Vera's voice sliced through the air. You're flying first class with that ID? Really? Every sound around us, zippers, overhead announcements, children's chatter, seemed to dull at once. Her words echoed not because she shouted, but because she knew how to project just loud enough to catch attention, enough to leave a mark. I turned my head slightly, not enough to face her, just to acknowledge. She added, Using a passport for a domestic flight? That's a little unconventional, isn't it? A woman behind me hesitated in line, glancing from me to Vera and back. I could feel the question forming in her eyes. What's going on here? I calmly replied, It's my federal ID. Perfectly valid. Vera gave a short, amused laugh. Oh, sure. I guess anything goes these days. Her tone carried weight, not from volume, but implication, the kind that makes strangers lean in, the kind that invites doubt. I could feel the shift in the air. A few feet away, a child tugged at her mother's arm, whispering something. The mother pulled her close. An older man adjusted his glasses, his eyes narrowing at my passport. And just like that, I was on trial, again. I looked at Vera. She had that expression she wore when she was just being helpful, the one she used when she corrected teachers about my spelling bee registration in 3rd grade, or when she told my prom date I wasn't ready for serious things. Always the same expression. Polite concern, tinged with superiority. You think you're being subtle? I asked, still soft, still measured. Her smile froze. Dakota, relax, she replied, eyes darting to the gate agent. No one's accusing you of anything. You're just being sensitive. I stepped forward in line again. She leaned in, voice lower now. Maybe they'll finally see what I've always seen. You're not who you pretend to be. There it was, the final flick of the match. She wanted me to react, to explode, to give the crowd something to confirm their suspicions. And for a split second, I felt the heat rise, that instinct to defend, to shout, to make her feel just a slice of the humiliation she'd carved into me. But I didn't. I turned to the gate agent and said, "I'd like to scan my boarding pass, please." The agent hesitated, looking between us. Her hand hovered over the scanner. I sensed the confusion, the unspoken question. Should she call security? Was something about to escalate? Before she could decide, a voice from behind us broke the tension. "Is there a problem here?" It came from a woman in a black coat, about my age, her tone casual but firm. She wasn't smiling. "No problem," I said, without taking my eyes off Vera. The woman nodded once and stepped aside, but her gaze lingered on Vera for just a second longer than necessary, like she saw it too. The gate agent cleared her throat. "Go ahead, Ms. Barrett." The scanner beeped, green. I walked forward. As I stepped onto the jet bridge, I felt Vera's eyes boring into the back of my coat. She wasn't done. I could feel it. People like Vera don't stop when they're ahead. They push. And when that doesn't work, they pull. From my seat near the front of the plane, I could see passengers filing in. Some still glanced my way, unsure of what they'd witnessed. Others ignored me entirely, wrapped in their own worlds of headphones and neck pillows. And then I saw her again. Vera. She stood at the entrance to the jet bridge, chatting with one of our cousins, perfectly composed, like nothing had happened. But I knew better, because people who fake grace in public often rot with bitterness in private, and the more perfect they try to appear, the more venom they're willing to spill when they think no one's watching. What Vera didn't know, what she had never taken the time to ask, was that I had spent years studying systems of power, that my job wasn't just about aviation regulations, but about behavior, abuse of privilege, the misuse of authority. She was textbook. She just didn't know which class I'd been teaching. But some people don't recognize a line until they've crossed it and torn through it completely. I remained in place as Vera strutted down the jet bridge like nothing had happened. Her posture was practiced, her smile sharp, her every step calculated for maximum optics. It was the same polished performance I'd seen her deliver at church fundraisers, local political mixers, and every holiday dinner where she passed herself off as the matriarch in waiting. But I saw something different in her this time. A slight crack, a hairline fracture under the surface. I moved back toward the windows near gate B32, phone in hand, needing space. A notification lit up the screen, a ping from a social media app I rarely used outside of work. Someone had tagged my name. I opened it, and there it was. A blurry, grainy photo taken from a distance. Me and Vera at the gate, her leaning in with that smirk, her mouth mid-sentence. The caption read, "Family drama unfolding at B32. Y'all, this is better than cable." Below the post, a thread had already started. Is that Vera Sloan, the women's empowerment speaker? No way. She just called out her sister in front of everyone. She's the one who did that TEDx talk, right? Lead with grace? Girl, where? I stared at the screen. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Vera had carefully curated her image. Photos of community events, sound bites about lifting other women up, smiling handshakes with city council members. But truth doesn't come with a filter. And this time, it came with 4K resolution. I didn't smile, but I felt something settle in me. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just alignment. Another buzz. A message. I opened it. It was from Marcus. We hadn't spoken in over 2 years. Last time I saw him was through the rearview mirror as he walked away, telling me he couldn't fit into my world. Whatever that meant, his message was short. Saw the video. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let her make you feel small. You never deserved that. I see that now. No grand apology, no ask for forgiveness, just clarity. And maybe that's what hit me the hardest, being seen by someone who used to dismiss me. I took a breath, closed the app, and stood tall. Vera might have controlled the narrative until now, but this story, I was done letting her write it for me. I walked back toward the group, my footsteps measured, heart steady. The cousins were gathered near the gate, laughing about something, pretending they hadn't heard or seen a thing. Vera stood at the center, as always. The sun streamed through the tall windows behind her, framing her like a portrait. If you didn't know better. But I did. I approached slowly, locking eyes with her. She held my gaze, waiting for me to speak first. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I said, clear and low, just for her. You've embarrassed me in front of strangers before, but I promise you, if you try it again, I won't stay quiet. Her smile twitched, just barely, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not guilt, not anger, hesitation. She scoffed. You always were dramatic. Keep thinking that, I said, then turned and walked away. Boarding had begun. Vera moved ahead of me in the line, shoulders squared, chin up. But her steps were a little too quick, a little too rehearsed. I let her go first. I had no interest in winning some imaginary race she was still running. The gate agent scanned my pass. Have a great flight, Ms. Barrett, she said. I nodded. Thanks. As I walked down the jet bridge, I whispered to myself. I warned her, because I had. And now, there was no going back. And once the uniforms arrived, Vera finally looked nervous. It was subtle at first, the way her shoulders stiffened as the airport police stepped into view, the quick flick of her eyes scanning for someone, anyone, to shield her. But the thing about bullies is, they're rarely prepared for consequences, especially when they believe they're untouchable. I stood perfectly still, my back straight, my voice steady, as I handed the 2 torn halves of my passport to the nearest officer. This was a valid federal document, I said calmly, not for effect, but for clarity. And it was intentionally destroyed by that woman. I nodded in Vera's direction. She is my sister. One of the officers, a middle-aged black man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense tone, took the pieces and examined them carefully. Did you witness her do this? Half the gate did, I said, without looking around. But we also have this. I held up my phone, showing him the video that had just been sent to me by a teenager across the gate who had caught the whole thing. He watched silently, then passed the device to his partner. Vera was visible in the footage, the posture, the smug tone, the sharp snap of the passport as it tore. Ma'am, he turned to Vera, we need to speak with you. Step over here, please. What? Are you serious? She laughed nervously. It's my sister. We were just joking. This is being blown way out of proportion. The officer didn't blink. Destroying a federal document is not a joke, ma'am. I watched as Vera's veneer began to fracture. Not all at once, but in tiny, unraveling threads. The gate, once filled with chatter and rolling luggage, had fallen silent. Passengers leaned against poles, holding phones low but pointed. You didn't need to shout to get attention anymore. All it took was a single, stupid act caught on camera, and a little bit of truth. Dakota, Vera turned toward me, her voice shifting, not cruel, not smug, but pleading. Can we just talk about this like adults? I tilted my head. Now you want to talk? She stepped closer, but the officer gently blocked her path. I didn't mean to. I didn't think. No, I said. You never think. That's the problem. The gate agent, who had watched the entire thing unfold with wide eyes and stiff hands, cleared her throat. "We've paused boarding for now," she said, "until we get clearance from the supervisor." A ripple of groans moved through the crowd, but no one dared speak up. I turned slightly, making another call. This time, not to the director. I had already notified him. This one was personal. "Hey, it's me," I said when Malis answered. "You should come back to the gate. Things just got resolved." She was there within minutes, eyes wide as she saw Vera surrounded by airport security, now speaking to a manager in a dark blazer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "She did it," I replied. "Tore the passport right in front of everyone. Didn't even hesitate." Malis didn't say anything, just watched. "She's going to spin it," I said. "Try to turn it into a misunderstanding. Say I overreacted. She always does." "But this time," Malis said, "she won't be the one holding the mic." I nodded. There was a shifting energy in the room now. Not chaos, not anger, just a sharp electric awareness. The curtain had been pulled back, and what stood behind it wasn't leadership or grace or sisterhood. It was control, entitlement, and a lifetime of being allowed to rewrite history. Not anymore. Security escorted Vera to a side room. She went, still muttering, still trying to salvage the image, but the whispers were already louder than her voice. And the video? It had already reached someone who posted it on a local community news page. "Family drama or felony?" the headline read. "Woman rips sister's passport at ATL. Gets detained." I turned back toward the jet bridge. The gate agent caught my eye. "We're ready for you now, Ms. Barrett," she said. I walked past the stairs, past the silence, past the memory of being told to sit down and stay quiet. But this time, I wasn't the one being erased. Vera finally looked nervous, but not because of the uniforms. It was the eyes, the quiet stare of the passengers, the way every phone was angled just slightly toward her without shame. That's what shook her, not the badges, not even me. It was the realization that her carefully crafted image wasn't bulletproof anymore. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't need to list her wrongs or shame her publicly. The video had done that for me. The internet wasn't kind to hypocrites, especially those who marketed themselves as symbols of empowerment and sisterhood while dismantling someone else's dignity with a smile. A TSA officer approached me, professional and respectful. "Ms. Barrett, would you be willing to give a full statement?" I nodded, handed him my credentials, and watched as he scanned them, eyebrows lifting slightly when he reached the badge. "FAA? Senior Field Inspector," I confirmed. Vera heard that. Her head turned so fast it almost startled the agent next to her. "You're what?" she blurted. "FAA? Since when?" "Since you stopped paying attention," I replied without looking at her. "I didn't know." She started. "That's the point," I interrupted, calm but unwavering. "You never cared to ask." The TSA officer gave a subtle nod and began taking notes. Just behind me, a woman in her early 20s leaned over and whispered to her friend. I caught the tail end. "That's the sister, the one from that conference?" Her friend nodded, eyes wide. "Yup, women in power speaker. Guess the power skipped a generation." I should have felt smug, vindicated, even victorious. But I didn't. What I felt was weight, the heaviness of years, of silences swallowed, of dignity traded for peace. The terminal supervisor arrived, speaking in hushed tones to the officers. The gate was officially paused. No one moved except for the occasional adjustment of luggage or whisper through cupped hands. Vera tried to pivot. "Look, I made a mistake. I was trying to protect the gate. You know, with all the threats these days. I thought." "No," I said. You thought you could treat me like you always have and no one would stop you. That's not fair. Neither is tearing up someone's passport on federal property. The supervisor turned toward her. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us. She stepped back. This is ridiculous. You can't just— We can, he said plainly. A TSA agent gently but firmly guided her away from the group. She didn't fight it, but the disbelief clung to her face like static. She looked over her shoulder once as if expecting someone, anyone, to jump in and defend her. No one did. No cousins. No bystanders. Not even her husband, who had mysteriously drifted into the background at some point, checking his phone like the floor might swallow him whole. I stayed where I was, arms crossed, holding the broken pieces of my passport in one hand, my ID in the other. One of the agents came to me quietly. We'll handle processing. Can we reach you later today for a formal report? Yes, I said. I'll make myself available. He gave me a tight, appreciative nod. As they moved Vera toward a side corridor, the gate slowly came back to life. People whispered. Some avoided my eyes. A few gave small, respectful nods. One older man, maybe late 60s, gray slacks, pressed shirt, walked past me and paused. She thought you wouldn't stand up, he said softly, not unkindly. Glad you did. I didn't respond, just nodded. Malis came to stand beside me. She didn't speak for a moment, just looked toward where Vera had disappeared. She's not going to come back from this, she said. She never thought she'd have to, I replied. She'll spin it, Malis added. Try to say it was a moment of stress, that you blew it out of proportion. I exhaled slowly. She's used to rewriting the story, but this time, I own the pen. And just like that, the boarding resumed. The gate agent called out the next group. The noise returned, soft but steady. I stepped forward, not to board, but to gather my things. As I reached down for my bag, another notification flashed on my phone. TikTok, 88,000 views and counting. The video, the rip, the fallout. It wasn't just an airport incident anymore. Vera's name was trending, and not for a keynote speech or a podcast appearance. This time, the world saw the unfiltered version. But closure doesn't mean forgetting. It just means I'm finally free to move forward. A week passed, but the echoes of that morning at Gate B32 still lingered. Not in my body, I felt steady now, but in the way people looked at me, even strangers. Recognition came from unexpected places. A nurse at my clinic appointment, a man across the produce aisle, a barista who simply said, I saw what happened. You stood up. Thank you. The video had passed 3 million views by the 4th day. Every platform had picked it up. Reddit threads, reaction videos, think pieces about family dynamics and race, leadership and hypocrisy. Some articles praised me, others dissected Vera's fall from grace. But all of them agreed. This wasn't just a spat between sisters. It was a mirror, and people had opinions about the reflection. Headlines varied. My favorites were the quiet ones. Sister shreds passport, gets exposed by FAA agent. Leadership coach dismantled by her own sister's credentials. Vera had gone silent, or rather, her handlers had. The motivational speaker circuit pulled her from the upcoming conference schedule. Her consulting firm issued a carefully worded statement about reevaluating partnerships. The podcast she co-hosted paused new episodes out of respect for all parties involved. In other words, the machine was grinding to a halt. Not broken, just stunned. Then came the email. It landed in my inbox like a legal memo. Too polished, too hollow. A statement of regret, full of passive phrasing and sanitized remorse. I apologize for any misunderstanding or discomfort caused. It was never my intention to escalate the situation. No signature, just the name of the PR firm in the footer. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I whispered to myself as I closed the message, "You didn't misunderstand. You just underestimated the wrong sister." There was no need for fireworks, no dramatic takedown. What Vera had lost wasn't her platform, it was her grip, her version of the story. The one where she always knew best, where I was difficult, dramatic, the one who couldn't let things go. I let it go now, just not the way she expected. Days later, back in my apartment in D.C., a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. The handwriting on the front shook slightly, the way pens do in older hands. I opened it, curious but cautious. Inside was a letter, no typed lines, just pen on paper. "My name is Walter. I was at Gate B32. I'm 76 years old. I watched you stand tall while being stripped of your dignity. I wish I had done that when I was your age. Thank you for showing me what grace looks like." I read it twice, then a third time. By the end, I was crying, not out of pain or victory, but release. For the first time in years, I wasn't the only one in the room who remembered what happened. Someone else had seen it, a stranger, and he chose to name it, not retweet it, not debate it, just acknowledge it. That letter meant more than anything Vera had ever said to me. I folded it gently, placed it in a drawer next to a copy of my new passport, and sat for a long time. No more chasing apologies that wouldn't come. No more giving chances to people who weaponized closeness. I didn't file further charges. I didn't push for more consequences. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need to keep holding the weight. I blocked her number, archived the emails, and filed my internal report at the FAA. Case closed. Incident resolved. Internal notes. Boundary redefined. A week later, I was back at the airport. Different gate, different flight. No family this time. Just me. I wore a navy blue blazer, not to prove anything, just because it felt like mine again. The gate agent scanned my ID, paused, then smiled. "Inspector Barrett, welcome back." I returned the smile, tucked my passport into my coat, and said simply, "It's good to be seen." I didn't expect peace to feel so quiet. 1 month after the airport incident, I found myself standing in the doorway of a modest, sunlit townhouse just outside the city. Inside, the hum of conversation was low, warm, the kind that floats between coffee cups and quiet embraces. It was a small memorial gathering for my mother, organized by a few of our cousins and family friends. Vera wasn't here. She hadn't been invited. There was no ceremony, no printed programs, no grand displays of grief, just a framed photo of my mother in her favorite garden hat perched on the fireplace mantel. Her smile was faint, but it looked real, unlike the ones we'd forced for family portraits all those years. I set a plate of lemon cookies on the table near the window and nodded at Malis, who was arranging flowers next to the photo. She met my eyes and gave me a soft smile, one of those rare moments where nothing needed to be said. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for a jab, a sigh, or a sideways glance. No one was waiting for me to prove I belonged. They asked about my work and they listened. They laughed at my stories, not at me. I hadn't earned a seat at this table. I had chosen it. That was the difference. Later, while others chatted in the kitchen, I slipped into the den and sat down in front of the photo. I studied her eyes for a long moment, letting the room fade behind me. My mother had always been composed, warm but measured. She loved her daughters, but she never stepped into the storms between us. She said, "Let them work it out, even when the winds bent trees." I leaned forward slightly, voice low. "You taught me how to hold still," I said, "how to keep things from falling apart." I exhaled. but you didn't teach me when to walk away." I didn't blame her. Not really. She had been a woman of her generation. Silence was survival. But I was not obligated to inherit that silence. From my pocket, I took out a folded slip of paper. The letter from Walter. It had yellowed slightly, the ink softened by time, but I kept it close. He had seen me, not as a victim or a headline, but as a person. Sometimes, that's all you need. As I returned to the kitchen, my phone buzzed. Another message from Vera. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I'd heard enough over the years. The backhanded concern, the hollow justification, the version of me that only existed in her retellings. I deleted the voicemail before it finished playing. I was trying to protect the family's image. You took it public. You've always been dramatic. No, I had been silent for years, but I was never the one who broke anything. I just stopped pretending nothing was broken. A few days later, I was back in my office at the FAA. The calendar on my wall showed my next assignment, a mentorship program for junior inspectors. It felt right, full circle, but forward. My assistant popped in, holding a folder. There's an invitation to the Leadership Women's Summit next quarter. They want you to speak. I laughed gently. That same conference Vera had once headlined, back when her name carried weight instead of questions. No need, I said. Let them keep their platform. I'll build my own. On the morning of my next departure, I packed light. A folder of notes, a fresh badge, my repaired passport. As I walked through the airport, not as a sibling, not as someone's daughter, but as a woman wholly herself, I passed by a terminal window. The reflection stared back, same face, same eyes, but no longer waiting to be invited. I smiled, not for the mirror, but for myself. Some stories don't end with apologies or reunions. Some end with a woman reclaiming her own name and never handing it back. Some stories don't end with a loud fight or a tearful reunion. Sometimes they end with someone quietly choosing peace over permission and finally being seen for who they are. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice in a family that kept rewriting your role? Share your story in the comments. And if you found strength in this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more true stories of quiet courage and powerful comebacks.